Hi, my name is Carson. I'm the current administrative assistant for chemistry and fermentation sciences, and I made a resource for the permits and wait lists that you will be in charge of in this position, and I just kind of wanted to go through it and try to give as many details as possible because it's pretty much the main part of your job, and you'll do it pretty much all year. So I want to try to give you as much information as I can about how to do it or how I did it, and just a little bit of background. So yeah, well, I'll show you the PowerPoint as well as different resources that will be helpful for you, hopefully. And you'll just have to bear with me a little bit because this is the first time doing something like this where I'm sharing my screen and recording as well. So, okay. So, let's go back. Okay, so the different categories of the permits, like I said, it will last pretty much all year, but there will be different kinds of permits happening at different times, so as well as overlap. So the first category of permits is department chair permits, and these are for the classes that are on the schedule that have department chair approval needed on those classes, and it'll change for fall and spring and summer as well. So, but I'll go more into detail on that later. So these permits, students cannot register without, they can't register without a permit. And so we receive submissions from the advisors that tell us whether or not these students whether or not these students do need these classes. And then we assign the seats based on the students' preferences. And this is to make sure that the students that need the classes at a certain time frame are able to register, and there are not other students registering for these classes that don't need it. The next is orientation and transfer student permits. So these happen after early registration, so after the students that are currently going to app have already been able to register. So we save some seats in our classes for the new incoming students and transfer students so that they're able to make a schedule for their incoming semester. And I didn't mention, so for the department chair permits, this typically happens during advising season, which is before early registration. And it does carry over into early registration before we actually do end up giving the permits to make sure that everyone's had a chance to be advised and that we've gotten all the requests. And then the third kind of permit is for retakes and then also wait lists. So retake permits are for when a student needs to retake one section of a class and not the other because they didn't meet the minimum grade requirement or they just didn't pass it at all. And then the wait lists are for the students that weren't able to register due to reserved seating or for just not being enough seats in the class, which, like I said before, we do hold back some seats for orientation and transfer students. And so once those students have registered, then we can start adding students from the wait list. All right, so the department chair permits. And actually, before we move on, I'm going to go ahead and show you where these resources are located in the Chemistry and Fermentation Sciences Resources Shared Drive. So I've tried to put as much information in here as possible to be helpful. And so under this permits and wait lists folder, you'll see there's about 6 categories. This file is not really needed anymore. It was for COVID-19 era and having online labs and classes made it a little bit difficult for students to register. And so we sent out surveys, and that's what this information is. But you can see Bio 3800, Chemistry 2530, I'll go over those, Biochemistry, Department Chair, and Advising Permits, and then I also have a spreadsheet for Organic Chemistry, and that is there. And I'm actually I will eventually this spreadsheet to this folder as well. And this presentation is here if you need to look at it later. So let's go back. I'm actually gonna do this since that spreadsheet is right there, and then I can talk through this folder as we go on. So each semester you will need to create the Google form that the advisors request the permits for the students with. For the fall and the spring, the classes are different. So luckily we've been doing this for about 2 semesters, and so the permit forms are already created for a fall semester and for a spring semester. So you can take that, make a copy, remove the information, and update it. So, for example, this is the fall 2021 advising permit request form. It requests the student's first, last name, banner ID number, email address, their concentration, expected graduation date, date of advising, and then the different sections are divided by these blocks to make it easier for the advisors, because some students might not need every single class from this form. They might just need 1, or they might need 2. So it's just so that the advisor can easily scroll through and see which one that they need to add. So the prerequisites are also listed in these pictures. And so fall's a little bit interesting because we have, when they do advising for fall, they're also advising for second summer session, which is quantitative analysis is offered in the second summer session and then also in the fall. So just be careful with that. And this is the information that you'll need to update, which is the section, the date and time, or the days and time, and then the CRN number. And that's for all the classes, so for the labs as well. So you can see in fall, it's quantitative analysis, we call it quant, and then physical chemistry, which we call PChem. And you can see there's a lot more options for PChem. So we want to make sure that only the advisors are the ones filling out these request forms, and that way we know that the student has been advised to take the class, and it just makes it easier when we're going through the information. What we did in order to help the students out, since they're not the ones filling out the form, and help the advisors out so that the students can prepare for their advising meeting and know which lab section that they've learned, so that when they come to advising, the advisor can just fill out the form while the student is there. That's the ideal. So what I did is I created this document, which you can save as a PDF and then send to the faculty members so that they can send it out to their advisees. And what I just did is I listed when the lecture is and when the lab options are, so that they know. And just to be aware, this is a table that I've just taken the line, the grid, made it not visible. So if you ever try to edit it and it's being funky, you know that you can make those back or make them show up again. So that'll also need to be updated before the advising period. I also in here put the email that I sent with the request form so that you can have that as a template, but make it your own. Put any information that you want to put on there. I just wanted to give as many resources as I can. That's here, so send the Google form instructions and resource to the advising faculty. And this happens once the schedule is posted to the registrar's website, because before then we'll be able to see the schedule, but the students won't be able to and the advisors won't be able to. So typically they don't start advising the students until they can see the schedule online. And I do want to make Well, let's look at this next one. Right, so what you'll be doing to organize all this information that we receive from the Google Forms is you'll want to create a sheet with the data, with the responses. So you can just click here and it'll create a Google Sheet with all the data. If you don't know, I'm sure you know, but one other thing while we're here to note is that once I stop checking this spreadsheet frequently, I'll turn it off so it's not collecting any responses, and that way I don't miss anything. But so that spreadsheet with all of our data is here. So you could see from the earlier one too, there was about 109 responses. So it is a lot of work, and I have had our student office assistants help me with this. So each day that they come in, they check the spreadsheet to see if there's new submissions, and they'll input the data for me. Because once we have it here, then we can assign the sections, and we assign the sections in this spreadsheet. And so we did try to figure out a way to get this spreadsheet to automatically populate the other spreadsheet, and if you can figure out a way how to do it, great. We just couldn't get that to work. So I also color code the top with the colors in the Google form, so that it'll be helpful to easily be able to see which class you're moving. And you can see that there's advising notes as well, so they'll just give you a little heads up about the student, whether or not they need additional permits, whether that be to split the lecture and lab, or if they need a prereq permit. Those are all in the advising notes. But okay, so now we're going to look at this spreadsheet. So down at the bottom, there is a tab for each class. So this 2210 is the lecture, 2211 is the lab. So you'll see there's one lecture, and there is, well, this is summer, so this is second summer session. So let's look at fall. So there's one lecture with all the students' information. And the reason why we need all of this additional information is because there might be a handful of students that we can't accommodate. So we want to make sure we're accommodating the students that are graduating the soonest, or maybe they were advised sooner, so we can base how we give those permits based off of that, or their concentration and how important it is for their concentration. So we take this information, so say we take Anna Burley, actually I think there's, so these ones were taken care of, I just didn't highlight them. So that's one way the students and I can communicate and know what's been done, is once they've gotten it done, they'll turn it gray so that I know that it's been transferred to the other spreadsheet. So Joe Lohendorf, let's see what classes he needs. So it looks like he needed a second summer session, and he needed the lecture and the lab. He also, let's see if he needed any fall classes. Nope, this is just the carryover from that box. So he's not a great example, but let's see if David is. So he needed fall lecture, and then he gave his second choice and first choice. So his second choice was section 101, and his first choice was section 102. So I would take his information, all of this, I would copy it, and I would take it over to this spreadsheet, and I would paste it and change it back to the formatting. But then I'd also need to copy it into the labs. So here are the two lab sections. And his first choice was section 102. So since there's still spaces in this class, I'm gonna paste him here and also list what his second choice was. And obviously in this situation, there's only 2 labs, so it's gonna be section 101. And this semester, we didn't have to do wait lists, or sometimes we'll create the wait lists at the bottom of the sections. So this pink line is a student who's waiting, or we're not sure if we're going to be able to give them a seat yet. So that is there. And keep in mind that there are going to be some students that don't meet the prerequisites, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So here are the lists of the preferred number of seats for each class, and then the max seats for each class. So this section is for physical chemistry, and the preferred is 9 and the max is 12. So in this section, we have 11 students. So this student was also allowed to get a permit. Let's look what's next. Okay, so one thing that is kind of annoying to the students is that we need to wait to get all of these submissions from all of the advisors and before we can actually issue the permits, because we need to place the students in sections and move students around to make sure that the sections are pretty even before we can issue those permits. So usually it doesn't happen until after early registration has started, and students will reach out to you and they'll reach out to the advisors as well, asking if they can get their permits, and just let them know that no students will be able to register without these permits, and that we will try to get them as soon as possible, but advising takes time and that we need to wait and give every student the opportunity to be advised. So just emailing the students, all the students frequently, just letting them know that we're still working on it, and a tentative date on when we're gonna give the permits is helpful. And there's also some students that are really worried trying to schedule their other classes, so you can give them an idea of what section they might be in, but I do that as a last resort. So again, some students won't pass the prerequisites, so in the past we've reached out to the faculty members that teach the prerequisite classes and see if they know if any students are already not going to pass. So that's kind of helpful for us to be able to assign students to a section. Okay, so once all the sections are assigned, we enter it into Banner. Under the permit override screen, and I'm just going to take this student. So in order to get this student to be able to register for this class, we use the chair approval permit. And then you would just type in the CRN number, or if you're working through them all and you only know the section, or you don't want to look up the CRN number, if you know the section, it will automatically pre-populate your CRN number. And you'll need to do the chair approval. You'll need to do one line for each class. So chair approval for the lecture. And let's say we're putting them in section 1 and 2, and then for the lab. And then you hit save, and they'll be able to register. So, and we like to keep the registration system clean without permits. And so I keep track and go back later and check to see if the students have registered, reach out to them to let them know if they haven't. And then once they do, remove the permits from the registration system. All right, So yeah, make sure to only make sure to include the section so it limits them so they can't register for the other classes. And in the past, I've emailed, while I've been issuing the permits, I'll email them by section. So because you'll need to provide the CRN numbers for them, which CRN numbers they should register for. So if once I get down with a section, I'll email them all, blind copy them all, or CC, it doesn't really matter because they're all going to be in the class together, and let them know to register with these CRN numbers. Okay. And late advisees requests will continue to come through all the way through early registration. And that's again, like I said, so these two students came through in in June, one came through. And so that's when I turned off the submission form from receiving responses, and they can just email me instead so that I don't have to come back and keep checking these, especially because at that point during the summer, the student employees won't be there helping us out. All right, so that is the department chair permits. And again, I would reach out to Alicia if you have any questions. Another thing, when you set up this spreadsheet for the next semester, you'll want to change the CRN numbers from the spreadsheet and remove all the old information to get it set up. So that's another step that you'll need to do. So now we're on to orientation and transfer student permits. Like I said, we save seats in our labs and lectures to make sure those students have the chance to register and stay on track. So for early registration, these are the numbers that we set up the classes to make sure that those seats are available. So for the organic labs, we set it up to 16, and the actual capacity for the rooms is 18. So we can add up to 2 students from each section, and this is for fundamentals of organic chemistry 1, and organic chemistry 2. And then for introductory chem labs, we initially set them up to 20, and then our absolute max for the rooms is 24. And then the lectures, we set them up to 77, and the max is based on the classroom capacity. So, and that's in the main document that has all the resources, what those maxes are, and I'll show you that in a second. So orientation permits for the summer are in the summer for the fall semester will most likely be issued by the admin in UC Advising and Orientation. And that's actually where I'm going. So I will most likely be helping you out on that end. But during the winter for the spring semester, it might be me or it might be you in the department. So Laura Newmark is the contact in UC Advising. That's really helpful and can talk you through that. This is the spreadsheet that we use. So the advisors in UC Advising submit this spreadsheet with the students and their first and second choice labs and lectures. And we issue them based off of how many permits we've issued other students. And so I created this page right here for me to keep track because you won't have the ability to register students, and so you need to keep track. So if we're originally setting 20 seats in a class, you'll need to know that they wanted us to only add 2 additional students at first to make sure that the classes are even. But the max is 4. So if you give 5 permits for a section that's originally set at 20 and no one drops, then that's 1 extra student that we're going to have to move and put in another section. So it's really important to keep in mind where you're overrating the students, and if the responses in this form are just not working out and you can't find another section that maybe is happening at the same time that has a different CRN number but has less students, then you can reach out to the advisor that submitted it and just ask and see if there's any flexibility at all, and most likely there usually is. So that is helpful. And so for the lectures, So these rooms, we had originally set it up to 77, and these rooms will go up to 85. This one goes up a little bit more. So yeah. So that is the orientation permits, just orientation. Transfer students sometimes are submitted through this form as well, but we also meet with the transfer students. And during that time, the department chair has the chance to give them a little background on the department and what different resources we have for them, different programs like the club and employment and doing research in the labs for the faculty. And so during this time, we also, before we meet with them, we check their schedule and see if they have all the classes that they need based on the transfer credit that they're receiving, if they have any. And we help them get into the classes at that orientation session. There are some transfer students that are not going to be chemistry majors, and those are the ones that are mostly in this spreadsheet. If students reach out through the permit request form, you can reach out to the department chair or the faculty or a faculty advisor to make sure that they've been advised before helping them into the classes, or even reach out and ask them if they've been advised by the university college advising, just to make sure that they're not going rogue and just trying to figure out what classes they're trying to do, because that sometimes leads to the students being behind. Especially for transfer students, it's often hard for them to get the classes when they first get here, and so we try to help them out as much as we can. This is another long section. I know this is going to be a pretty long video, but I hope it'll be helpful just to hear and understand the process. So now we're going to talk about retake permits and waitlists. So splitting up the lecture and lab. All the requests come through the permit request form over here. And if you get an email or if a student calls and they say they need help getting into a class, just refer them to the website and just ask, hey, did you fill out the permit request form? This gives us all the information we need in order to help you best. And there's also some information here on top that I highly recommend that you read through just to kind of understand the different scenarios a little bit better. So for the permit request form, they can submit for splitting the lecture or lab, and this is for retakes and non-degree seeking students only, or if they're having issues with prereq errors or reserved seating and capacity limits. So they'll just fill out this information, and it'll get sent to the chem registration email, and that's where we manage it. And I've kept a couple in here so that I can kind of walk through some examples. So when students request to take only one part of a class, we need to first double check that they've already taken these classes together before. They can't take the class just because, hey, like I have 14 credit hours and I only want to take 17 credit hours and I don't want to take 18 credit hours, so I really want to just take the lecture. That's not allowed because they're set up for success to take them together because they correspond with each other. So the material overlaps, and so they're most likely going to do better if they take them together. There's one exception, and that's students for taking the class for professional schools, but I still try to send them to their advisors to double check that they for sure don't need the lab, because usually what they want to do is only take the lecture. Also, non-degree seeking students, so students from other schools as well who are just doing for visiting coursework, or non-degree seeking students, again, if they already graduated and they need to take these classes before they can apply to PA school or med school or anything like that. For the visiting students and non-degree seeking students, you do want to make sure that they've already taken their prereq classes. This happens a lot for organic chemistry. So if anyone is asked to take organic chemistry or even Intro Chem 2, you want to request their transcripts as well as their syllabus. for the classes that they took. That's to make sure that they passed that class before the prerequisite class, and that the class is equivalent to the class that we teach here. So you can send those to the department chair, and then the department chair might ask one of the faculty members to look over the syllabus and make sure that it looks like an equivalent. And this is so that this student has the best chance to succeed, so that we know that they've already covered the material in their prerequisite classes that they needed to, and so they won't be behind coming into these new classes. But the problem is the information won't be in DegreeWorks already. If they're a non-degree seeking student or a visiting student, it won't be listed in DegreeWorks. So for example, let's see, I know I had an example here. So this is what the permit requests look like when they come through the email. They have the name, the email, the phone number, because sometimes they won't respond to emails, and after a while, if they haven't responded or if it's urgent, I'll just give them a call. But the banner ID number, their major, their class year, the semester they need permit for, and the course they're trying to take. So this student only wants to take 1120. And so I'll take their banner ID number. And I want to just double check that he's taken these classes before. So it looks like he has credit for 1101, 1102, 1110, but I don't see 1120. And down here, again, he took 1102, but don't have 1120. And usually it'll show down here, yep, he attempted this class, but they withheld credit. So he did not take 1120 to pass. So this student we can give the permit for. So I already have it copied. Sorry, it was Emma. Okay. So to split the lecture and lab, you'll have to do 2 lines for the same class. So the link for the lab, and it's always going to be for the class that they want to take. And then hit save. And then we would respond to this student, letting them know that the permits have been issued, to register as soon as possible, because that's one thing the students, they don't really understand always that they are still the ones responsible for registering. They think that we can register for them. So I always make sure to let them know that they need to register. And for taking only one class, you don't need to put CRN numbers, and it's their responsibility to find a seat in that class. At this point, the reserved seating has been released for any student to register, but if they still have any problems or if there's an issue with time conflicts, you can add another line for capacity, which will override the class so that they can register. It also overrides the reserve seating. And I think we'll talk about that in just a second. But so say this student needed one. I think that's organic chem. So here's a Chem 2 lab. So say this is the section that they would like to get in. There's still a seat available that we can give them, and they're still having trouble. We can put the capacity in as well. Okay, so in the past, the administrative assistants had printed each one of these requests and wrote down the CR numbers that they've issued. I And the reason why they did that is so that they can go back and remove them and have that paper copy. So instead of doing that, I know which sections they've been issued into when I respond to them. And then I'll use a label, and when I've given a permit, I will put it into this 2021 fall summer permit granted, and that way I know that this student still has permits in the registration system and that I'll need to go back and remove them. And additionally, I have a label that says fall summer removed, and so once I've checked and seen that the student has registered, I'll remove it, and then I'll put that label on there. Okay. So for students that could not register due to reserved seating or capacity, so like organic chem, if there's not enough seats available, we use the labels again to put them into waiting lists. And we wait until after orientation so that we know that all the transfer students and orientation students have been added to the sections before we add students to the classes. And each semester you'll need to set up these labels. So we have, over here, we have Intro Chem 1, Intro Chem 2, this is the granted and removed, Organic Chemistry 1, Organic Chemistry 2, and Fundamentals. So we can look at Organic Chemistry 1. I tend to use these stars a lot as well. So if I've reached out to a student to give them a seat, I'll give them a blue star, or sometimes, so these yellow stars are chemistry majors, and we always try to help the chemistry majors first. So I'll star them differently so that I know to reach out to these students even though these students are on the wait list first. Try not to disclose this to the students just to not to upset them, but we do need to look out for our chemistry majors. And the same thing goes for Organic Chemistry 2. I will give you a heads up. We are having a little bit of an issue this semester with Intro to Chemistry 2. So we have very, very limited lecture seats. So there is a chance that a lot of these students won't get in this semester, which is heartbreaking, but we just don't have the faculty members this semester to help these students and create additional classes. It's still possible, but we just haven't made that decision yet. You'll notice that probably most of these students are exercise science students, and I'll go over reserve seating in another video, but there's a lot of those students that need this class because their program is getting bigger, and we just don't have the resources to help them all. So it's more important for the nursing students to get into these classes first. So if you'll help the nursing students, if it's dire need, but then go by the wait list. All right. And also, as we're going throughout early registration, be sure to keep letting the department chair know where we are on the wait list, because there might be a chance that we can open up classes or combine sections so that we can combine sections of other classes so that we can free that instructor up to teach one of the classes that we do need. So just be sure to continue to let the department chair know. Some students will also, like I was talking about with the department chair permits, will be dropped closer to the fall semester or right before the spring semester, dropped for not meeting the prerequisites. And so that creates a lot of seats, and students will change their majors and not need chemistry anymore, or just need a different schedule and decide not to take chemistry this semester. So a lot of seats will open up so that we can help the students. Another thing that I want to, and then here are the dates for when that typically happens. But they do have the whole summer to try to meet those prerequisites. Another thing that I have set up is templates. So this is for 1101, 1102, and 1120, and I'm still going to help this student though, because they're a fermentation sciences major. And again, that's a chemistry major, and we want to make sure to help them. So, but if we weren't able to give them a permit, there is a template that explains to the student that we're really trying to help them, to be patient, to what they can do in the meantime. That is there, that you can send, and you might have to change it a little bit depending on like what is going on. Oh, computer is getting low. All right, so in addition, I have just one for organic chemistry because it's all pretty much the same. When I issue the permits, there's a little template to let them know to register, just to make things faster. And then this is for when we issue the permits for orientation. So I'll show you, it looks a little bit different, your first semester at App State and so on. Okay, there's a video on the website under the registration tab that goes over reserve seating, and that'll be really helpful. Some students don't know about the chemistry core search as well, which is a resource that the registrar made, and it goes into detail in this video. All right, so my computer did end up dying earlier, so we're back at it, and we are talking about the video for the students as well as the chemistry core search that the registrar's office set up for us so that the students can see which sections have seats for their major and they can prepare for registering. Because before, what they would have to do is they would have to try to register for every single lab that had seats to see if one of those sections would allow them to register, meaning that there was a seat for their major. So when the students are trying to register using the chemistry core search, it seems like some of the students don't realize that this is a separate tool in the registration system. So it's underneath the registration tab for the students. They will have to, so here's the chemistry core search, and they'll have to go back into the add drop classes section to add those CRN numbers. Lectures, intro lectures do not have reserve seating. That's another issue that the students run into, not understanding. So just let them know they can register for any lecture that has seats available, but they need to make sure that the lab that they're trying to register has a seat for their major. And right now, closer to the beginning of the semester, we released all the seats for the students to be able to register for any section. All right, so I will show you what I mean about that. So when you originally set up the reserve seating, you'll do it under this SAW-SECT schedule page, not the schedule maintenance form. It has to be done under this. So you'll enter the term, and if you're not familiar with how we set up terms, or we list terms, it's the year, and then 10 would be spring, 20 would be first summer session, 30 would be second summer session, and 40 is fall. So we're going to look at fall. And this should, be an 1120 lab. So you hit go. Under section enrollment information, you're going to want to look at 10 sections. So when you originally set up these classes, you will set them up based on the numbers that we've decided in the past. And typically that's 4 general seats, 5 bio seats, 4 nursing seats, 5 exercise science seats, 2 chemistry seats, and 1 GES or 1 nutrition seat. We split those between the total of the sections. So half of the sections have GES seats and half of the sections have nutrition seats. So when we originally set these classes up, these overflow check marks, we want to make sure that they're not checked. And what these check marks do is they allow students, if there's still one remaining seat in the general or in the nursing, they will be allowed, but there's none in theirs, they'll be allowed to register for those seats. So we keep these unmarked for the beginning of the semester to make sure that all the majors have enough time to be able to register. And then closer to the beginning of the semester, this year we did it mid-July after orientation. We go through and put those check marks. The general seats, so general just means any seats that don't fall into these other categories. You can't check the overflow. See, it says error. Cannot check override on first record. And so just a little background, these lines are corresponding with each other. So if this line is highlighted, it's for bio, and so right now there's six biology students registered, which means there was a capacity override issued for a biology student to make this 6. Same for exercise science, HES, which is health exercise science, but you'll also see that there was a capacity issued for a chemistry major, but that this has not been fixed yet. So when there's negative numbers on the screen, it'll show negative on the schedule. So what we do is we go here, we change it to 2, which updates it and makes it 0. And so before, let's see, where were we at before? So if there was only one seat, it's not gonna let me now. But anyways, we're gonna hit save and it'll actually show us. So before there was only 20 seats, the actual was 21 and -1, but that's not correct. Now we have 21 seats for this class. So what we do is we hit save again and again and make sure this yellow box pops up. If this yellow box doesn't pop up, this will not change on the schedule and it'll continue to say -1 instead of 21. So we hit yes, and we're all set to go. So that is how you change the reserve seating, as well as mark those indicator boxes when we know that all the orientation students have registered. But when we go through and check all the boxes, the chemistry course search will still show that there are not seats for their major, even though the overrides are in place. So I'm going to go to this registration tab, and I'm going to edit this section. I've listed on here the reserve seats have now, the date have been released for all majors, but the chemistry course search will not reflect this information. Please try to register for lab sections with available seats before reaching out to the department. I added a line. So finish that and save. So that is pretty much reserve seating. And again, the capacity permits are the ones that will also override the reserve seats for certain sections. Just be careful to keep in mind what sections you've already given permits for so that you don't go over 24, and to remove the permits after the student registers. Next is biochemistry. There is a folder under the permits and waitlists for biochemistry. And the biochemistry waitlist is managed by the faculty, the biochemistry faculty, which are typically Brooke Christian, Mike Reddish, Megan Culpepper, and sometimes also Jennifer Cecil. And they are the ones who decide which students will be able to join the class or not. But you will help them out by creating the spreadsheet for them, the Google form, as well as the spreadsheet. And then this link will need to be added to the registration page. So right under here, under the permit request form, under here, and on the main page here. So just be sure to do that every semester so that the students can be added to that wait list. They'll still overlook the wait list and send us an email or even fill out the permit request form asking about this, and so just make sure to refer them back to that waitlist Google form. Also, if students reach out about the status, you can also point them into the direction of the biochemistry faculty. Next is Bio 3800. And this is a bio class that the forensic majors and biochemistry majors need to take under the permanent waitlist. And the forensic students don't technically have the prereqs to take this class, but we have an understanding with the biology department to allow these students to register, but they'll need permits, prereq permits entered into the system to allow them to register. So Libby Puckett, who is the director of the forensic science program, she will send this Google form to her advisees that need to take this class, asking for their lab section preferences. But you'll need to create the spreadsheet, the Google form for her, as well as the spreadsheet. And then this is also shared with 2 biology faculty, Courtney Baldwin and Andrew Bellamer, and they're the ones who actually issue the permits and reach out to the students. Lastly, we're almost there, we have Chemistry 2530. This is a new support course that we are issuing for the fall 2021 in order to help first-generation college students and transfer students have better luck passing chemistry. And so since it's the first semester, right now we only have 2 students registered, and there's 5 on the list, so you'll need to go back and check and see if those students have registered or not. But Jennifer, Cecil, and Amanda Howell will reach out to you with the students that are allowed to register, and you'll give capacity permits for those students and email them. And this is an email explaining the background of what this course is going to be, just for some helpful history. So I know that is a lot. It takes a while to get the hang of, but I'm sure you'll do a great job. As well as I wanted to give you a little few pointers that I've really enjoyed too, is I tend to not keep emails in my inbox if I've either not helped them or I'm still waiting for a response. So whenever I haven't helped a student, I will make sure it's kept as unread, and then everything else will come down here. Once I have finished working with the student, I will mark out the inbox, and so that keeps your inbox a lot shorter and less overwhelming. And all the important students will have already been labeled for these categories. So if you have any questions, Alicia will be a big help, as well as Dr. Cartaya. She will be a great help as well, being the last department chair. Feel free to reach out to me as well, and I would be happy to help you with anything that I can. But yeah, good luck with everything, and that's it for now.